Now that you guys know all about Congress and how to write a Congress speech, I just wanted to take the time and go through a live demonstration of how we might actually write a congressional debate speech, just to clear up any clarifications and kind of show you guys how this process is going to work. So I have a bill in front of us. This is a typical congressional debate bill. It's a bill to increase the age to purchase nicotine products. You might want to pause, just read through it, familiarize yourself with it before we discuss. So now that you guys familiarize yourself with the bill, we can kind of discuss the different aspects of a bill and then how to go about dissecting and work on formulating your argument. So section 1 of any bill is basically telling you what this bill does. So this bill increases the age to purchase nicotine products from 21 from 18. Section 2 is always clarification of any terms used in Section 1. So since nicotine products isn't legally defined, Section 2 takes the time to define what exactly is a nicotine product, and it gives you all these examples of nicotine products that would be banned for 18-year-olds under this legislation. Section 3 usually tells who's in charge of this bill and any punishments for not proceeding with it. So it tells you that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, otherwise known as the ATF, will be responsible for implementing this legislation and ensuring tobacco isn't sold to anyone under the age of 21. And here, through subpoints A and B, they're just listing some of the various punishments that you can incur from doing this. Section 4 will tell you when this bill will start to be in effect, and then Section 5 says that all laws in conflict with this legislation are hereby declared null and void. And this is pretty much what the format for any congressional debate bill. Section 1 tells you what it is, Section 2 clarifies any terms, Section 3 tells you who's in charge, and Section 4 is what it tells you when this bill will start to take place. So when trying to come up with your arguments, there's a lot of different ways you can look upon this bill. You can go you can go straight to the topic. Should or should we not increase the age to purchase and sell nicotine products to 21? There's a lot of arguments just on a very idea-based level. Should we do this or should we not? Or you can go a little bit more in depth and seeing that like are some of these nicotine products shouldn't be classified in this legislation, or is there any problem with the way they've defined anything? That's another way you can look at this legislation. On top of that, you can look at who's in charge of this legislation. You can make an argument if the ATF is the one who should be in charge, or if there's another government agency that you think would be better. And then finally, you can look at Section 4 and seeing, is January 2020 a good date to start this legislation? Let's pretend it's 2019, but let's say this was January 2021. Is 6 months enough time for every single place that sells nicotine products to change their policy? Do you think it should be sooner? Do you think it should be later? By examining each of these 4 sections, you can do a different type of argument to see if this bill, we should pass it or we should fail it. For now, I'm going to look kind of a mix between Section 1 and Section 2. After looking at the bill coming up with the argument, I don't think it's right that they included nicotine gum as a nicotine product. As you know, nicotine gum is actually a pretty important medicinal use for people to get off of nicotine addictions. So people who are addicted to cigarettes or cigars or some other tobacco product, they actually often use nicotine gum to wean themselves off of the more dangerous cigarettes and towards something that's while still pretty bad for you, but it's less bad, and it helps people get over their nicotine addictions rather than trying to get off cigarettes. It's much easier to get off nicotine gum. So it's a pretty effective tool that's often medically prescribed for people to get off severe tobacco and severe nicotine addictions. So I don't think that's right that they included, and that's what I'm going to make my argument upon. So we can start off going to our pad and then starting to write out a speech. So for now, we're going to skip the introduction and move on to our first claim. Based on what we were talking about, we're going to go with the claim that we are going to increase nicotine addictions if we pass this legislation. And based on the logic we've talked about earlier, our warrant is going to be that we're going to be inadvertently eliminating the tools needed to recover from and addiction. So we got our main claim is that we're going to increase nicotine addictions, and our logic behind that is that we're taking away the tools people used to actually recover from a nicotine addiction. So obviously you're gonna have to do some research, find some sources to corroborate and kind of bring some credibility to what you're saying. I've already done this in the nature of time, so we're gonna simplify this process a little bit. I found this great source talking about how nicotine replacement theory, such as the nicotine gums, transdermal patches, sprays, inhalers, and lozenges, all help in lowering nicotine addictions, and they're actually been clinically proven to help this. We got a great source saying that nicotine gum and other similar nicotine products that would be banned under this legislation are actually super helpful in order to help people recover off of these nicotine habits. We understand some of the science behind such nicotine replacement therapy. I found another great source talking a little bit behind the psychology of why nicotine replacement theories that would be banned under this legislation are actually helpful. And it kind of talks about how it helps manage nicotine withdrawal, helps go through the recuperation process, and kind of helps people break the habit of smoking in a much healthier way than normally possible. We got two different data points kind of backing up this idea that certain nicotine products like nicotine gum are super helpful for people to get off their addictions. And this, we have one talking about the science behind it, and we have one talking about the psychology behind it. And we've kind of proven our claim that we're going to increase nicotine addictions because we're eliminating the tools that people need to recover from an addiction. Now we can move on to our impacts if we're still going by the 6-part format. So we have our logical impact. So we say by taking away the tools people have been using to get off their addictions, we're only going to make it harder to and quit smoking and using nicotine products. Therefore, we will increase the number of addictions by making it harder to quit. So we got our logical impact. We've restated the logic behind our argument and why we're using the source that we're using. And then now we're going to move on to our human impact. So our human impact is that essentially we're going to be leaving people who are trying to quit, but we're taking away the tools they need in order to be successful. So we can say we as representatives of the United States cannot pass a legislation that would take away the medical tools our constituents need to help them recover from severe nicotine addictions. So we've kind of walked through the 6-part model in that we've had our claim, what we're going to do, what this bill is going to do. It's going to increase nicotine addictions. We have our warrant, the logical reasoning behind it, and that's that we're going to eliminate the tools needed to recover from an addiction. Then we have 2 data points kind of talking about why nicotine replacement therapy is super important, and that's the stuff that we're getting away with this legislation. And then kind of talk about the psychology behind why nicotine replacement therapy is super important in the recovery process. Then we have our logical impact summarizing the logic behind our argument. And then finally, we have our human impact saying that we're making it impossible for addicts to help get off their addiction by taking away the tools they desperately need. Next, let's move on to our second point. So we know the dangers of like vaping in the status quo, that a lot of people are dying from using vaping products. So we can link that to our first topic in saying that we're making it really hard for people to get off their nicotine addictions by passing this legislation. That means we're going to see more deaths from such nicotine related complications. So we're going to say we're going to increase the number of vape related deaths. And this is because our logical reasoning, because more people will be addicted to nicotine products when we take away the tools they need to recover. So we got two sets of data from this talking about some of the problems in society that come from vaping related usage. We have children getting rare types of pneumonia, especially like young adults from vape related products. We have, and then it kind of talks about some of the science behind that. And then our idea is that because we're taking away the tools people need to recover, we're going to have more young adults who are still addicted to nicotine and who are more susceptible to these kinds of injuries. So our logical impact is going to be that greater numbers of people who are still addicted to nicotine, if we take away the tools they need to recover, will have higher chances of encountering, of succumbing to vaping related deaths. That's going to be our logical impact. The more people that are still addicted by taking away the tools they need to recover, they're going to be more deaths from vape related causes. And finally, our human impact will be that more of our young constituents will be dying due to vape related illnesses if we take away the tools they need to recover from nicotine addictions. And again, we follow the same claim, warrant, data, and impact model, and ensuring that we have both a persuasive argument while also being logically sound. So then we can move on to our conclusion. And then, so we'll go through quick bullet points. No need to put in a paragraph. We're going to sum up our argument at saying taking away medical devices to help with addiction will only increase the number of young adults addicted to nicotine. And then, as a follow up to that, we have another sentence talking about our second point when we say that more people addicted will lead to more deaths. More people addicted to nicotine will lead to more deaths. And then we kind of summarized our 2 points, reminded the audience what we've been talking about, and then we kind of finally ended off with the impact and saying that this legislation takes away the best tools young adults have to conquer their nicotine addictions. If we pass this bill, we are taking away their best chances to recover and making them more susceptible to fatal illnesses that come from nicotine addictions. So, as we've talked about earlier, we've reiterated our two arguments, reminded the audience what we've been talking about, and then finally end off by emphasizing this impact. We're taking away the tools they need to conquer their addictions, and without those tools, they're more susceptible to illnesses. And we're really hitting it home why people should care about our argument. And then finally, our introduction be really anything about nicotine addiction. We can, for this, probably funny stories are really applicable. So I'd really go with some sort of strong statistic about nicotine deaths among young adults, because that's who this bill affects. Anyone from 18 to 21 who were once able to purchase these nicotine relieving products but no longer are able to, or a powerful story about someone who tried to seek medical help for nicotine addiction, but was unable to. So this is obviously a more shortened version of how you guys would eventually end up writing a congressional debate speech. I obviously had the data points prior, so it would be up to you guys to find appropriate sources on the internet that really bolster your arguments. But this is kind of basically how you'd walk through the process of doing a congressional debate speech. you'd have your introduction, then you'd have your first contention, then your second contention, and then finally you'd have your conclusion that kind of wraps it all up and then gives that final impact. So just this is just supposed to be a guide of how you might go about writing your congressional debate speech. Remember, always try to follow the template as best to your ability. That'll really make it easier for you guys in trying to write speeches as quickly as possible, but also being persuasive and also being logically sound. So good luck with that. As always, contact any of your counselors, anyone during office hours if you ever need any help with writing your speeches. And good luck on the tournament on Friday.